There's going to be a battle here tomorrow. You'll fight in it. Maybe even die in it. But you won't see it. There's a lot of smoke in a battle. Our cannon. Their our shot. Their shell. Our volleys. Their volleys. You don't see a battle. You hear it. Black powder blasting back ton on both sides. Black smoke blinding you and choking you and making you vomit. Then the French come out of the smoke. Not in a line, but in a column. They march towards our thin line, kettle drums hammering like hell and a golden eagle blazing overhead. They march slowly, and it takes them a long time to get here. And you can't see them in smoke, but you can hear the drums. They come out of the smoke, and you fire a volley, and the front rank of column goes down, and the next rank steps over them, kettle drums hammering like hell, and their column smashes out like a hammer breaking glass. And Napoleon Bonaparte has won another victory. But if you can stand and wait until you can smell the garlic, then fire volley after volley into them, 3 rounds a minute. Then run away. All you've got to do is stand and fire 3 rounds a minute. Now, I know you can fire 3 rounds a minute, but can you stand?
This is The General, Warfare in the Napoleonic Era. As the back of the box says, a 3D graphical representation of warfare in the Napoleonic era. The game is by Ian Williams, published by Case Computer Simulations. In The General, you see the conflict unfold before you from a first-person point of view. Distant troops are only identifiable by using a telescope. Units may be obscured by buildings. Orders take time to reach the units to which they have been issued, and reports from your brigade commanders may be lost on their way back to you. These features, along with many others, make The General exceptional. The standard bird's eye view has been replaced by the General's eye view, and communication problems added to give the players a taste of the real difficulties faced by the generals of that time. Assume the role of the General of the Grand Army and experience the authentic atmosphere of Napoleonic warfare. Here's a lovely loading screen showing that we're not facing Napoleon Bonaparte, but probably his brother, Louis Bonaparte, who was the King of Holland. Although really this is probably due to the fact that the Jonathan Caldwell poke had not been discovered yet, and to get around the problem where displaying things on the screen gets ruined, he cleverly positions the print cursor in the middle of the screen and prints white ink on white paper. The game is mostly in BASIC, with a little bit of machine code, as you see from the loader. But we have a nice loading screen while we're getting started. The game as bought came in a lovely video style box, plastic clamshell type thing, with a manual, black and white manual, printed on glossy paper, and the cassette. The manual was not scanned in and archived, so I bought the game on eBay. This is my copy, as you see here. Scanned it in for other people to use. I had the game as a kid though and enjoyed it, although I remember being stressed because I couldn't work out how to get out of the square formation. So at this point we were loading for about 5 minutes, and the game is now actually loaded, but what we now need to do is to load the main game screen. Mr. Williams did a cracking job fitting this game into 48K, And to save a bit of memory, what we have to load is the actual main screen as a screen string file, which is what we're now doing. This does mean you get no choice in how you lay out your troops, but it's not the end of the world. See here the word loading is disappearing, because that's now getting replaced with the data for the actual main battle screen, which is loading. We'll see lines appear at the bottom at any moment, which are the last couple of lines. Here are the attributes, and here is the general. The deployment of the troops is the same every single game. At this end of the valley are the heroic British troops. They're not really British, but you know what I mean. And at the far end are where the enemy come in. They're not really French, but they are really. We all know that. So you have 7 regiments of infantry, 5 squadrons of cavalry, and 3 artillery batteries. Starting on the left, you get the 1st Cavalry on the little horses. These are close range, at nice big chunky figures. The cannon represents the 1st artillery battery, and to the right of them is the 1st infantry regiment. Scroll over to the right-hand flank. We then get the 2nd infantry regiment, flanked by the 2nd artillery battery and the 2nd squadron of cavalry on the extreme right-hand side. So remember, the numbers start on the left at the front. So it's not on the left going. Then the 2nd rank, you've got the 3rd infantry and cavalry, and then the 3rd artillery in the centre. On the right, you then have the 4th cavalry and the 4th infantry. And at the back, closest to the general, there's the 5th infantry on the rear guard on the left. In the centre is the 6th infantry and the 5th cavalry. And on the right-hand side, you get the 7th infantry, hopefully not commanded by General Custer. So on starting the game, you give the opportunity to load a save game, or any other key to start a new game. Choice of difficulty levels, 1, 2 or 3. This affects the chance of communications going astray, the effects of gunfire and visibility, the strengths of units, and also how many reinforcements the enemy gets at noon. You see there the 2 farms. These are critical to the campaign. You need to control both farms and have less losses than the enemy. The farm location, there always are those that distance along the valley, but they vary exactly to their left-right position. Broadly speaking, you've got 3 sort of zones. There's close range, which is where your troops start, and then there's medium range, and then there's the far distance, which is where the enemy start. Here I'm moving my telescope around, which is the white square, using the cursor keys, and then by pressing 1, 2 or 3, you get to zoom in and see what's going on. And if you examine a unit, it is noted to the left or right of the telescope for ease in making orders later on. In the far distance, units are stacked. That's why you need 1, 2 or 3, 1 being the closest, 2 being the medium, and 3 being the furthest away. There's approximately 10 spaces across the valley and 17 along it. Units move pretty much 1 space a turn unless they're cavalry charging to the attack, in which case it's 2. That means it's going to take nearly 3 hours for an infantry unit, say infantry number 7, to get to the far end of the valley. So here I've issued an order. You can issue orders to the entire army, or to just the infantry, cavalry or artillery, or to individual units. They can move, you can engage. So here every single unit is now going to be moving north. And also inspect a unit, in which case we ride around the unit and basically that improves its morale. At the end of every turn, we think and then the units move. Relay orders, there's a chance of these going astray. To the bottom left of the watch, you can see the difficulty level, which is 2. Each turn is 10 minutes long. You have at noon, the enemy get reinforcements, and you have to win the game by 7 PM, at which point dusk falls. So here, everyone's started to move. Enemy is slowly advancing down the valley. So you've got a couple of hours, approximately, until you get into the thick of the action.
Fire the cannons!
So let's look at the game in effect. This is footage I took from a Twitch stream. I've been playing for about half an hour at this point. And the French are advancing and are menacing the south farm. And we're now having a bit of a think to see what's going on. There's my cavalry there attacking their infantry. Artillery's advanced slightly, relaying orders. We're on level 2, as you can see it's currently 10 to 9. And things are progressing quite nicely. It's taking about an hour and a half for the troops to move up. And my infantry there is moving forward, I think. That might be a retreat. Everyone's moving nicely. There is no sound because I was chatting in the chat as well. So this is just to see what's going on. There are 2 bits of machine code used for the sound. There's the artillery, that's artillery firing on the French infantry. And there's also sort of a bloop bloop for hand-to-hand combat, as you would have here for the cavalry versus the infantry. So you get who's attacking, and then who's attacking flashes in yellow, and the target flashes in white. Things move forward. We're only following orders. So you have 2 units that may not follow orders. One of the units selected randomly is very aggressive, and another unit chosen at random is cowardly. So you may tell them to hold and they may just run off unexpectedly, or the attackers may just charge off the field. I played one game where the cavalry number 1 was the aggressive one, and at the start of the game it instantly charged the enemy at the far end of the valley and refused all orders to return. So if you're in the very, very close, the orders are delivered within the same turn. As you go further up the valley, orders take longer to get there. So it's now 9 o'clock. Let's see what's going on. My first cavalry there is fighting his 2nd infantry. They're down to about 2/3 strength, so we're doing okay there. And let's see what my artillery is doing. The 2nd artillery is probably still going to be firing on the 4th infantry, I'd have thought, with the infantry directly ahead of him. Let's check out what orders we've currently got. So the 1st infantry is occupying the south farm. The artillery is firing on various infantry units. It's all very nice. No inspections. And let's see what this unit's doing. 3rd infantry. They're not taking much damage as yet, but we are starting to shoot at them. So I could order forward the 2nd cavalry on the right hand flank to engage them. That will then force them to form square to protect themselves, and then my artillery fire will greatly increase in strength. So here's the 4th cavalry. So if you charge forward, the enemy will tend to form square. If you form square, you can't move, but you'll get much greater defense against cavalry. However, you're much more vulnerable against artillery. So it's a sort of a paper, scissors, stone thing. So here we are. Order cavalry. Engage with E, infantry 3. So it's issue order, cavalry 4, engage infantry 3. That's how the orders work. But for artillery, the artillery do not engage, they fire upon. So you can find out which piece is which. Check our orders again. We've got the red order is a new order for this turn. And then, bastard! We crash back to the loading screen. As a kid, I had this game, and I never ever lost a battle. On the other hand, I never ever won a battle, because this sort of thing happened all the time, and I never knew why. This happened several times on the stream. Let's try again. This is a new game, done live on the stream. It's now about 10 past 8. We're now on level 3, so I didn't know which order the difficulty levels were, so I've gone for the hardest difficulty, level 3. Unbeknownst to me, I had no manual, so I was trying to work out. It took me about 20 minutes to work out how to use the telescope, which is a bit of a problem. Fortunately, the manual now exists online. It's a well-written manual. Various factors feed into combat, such as your morale and your strength. With cannons, it's affected the visibility as well. Because when you fire, you produce lots of smoke. So musket fire and especially cannon fire make visibility worse. And it gets better throughout the day, provided you're not firing too much. But then obviously it gets dark, gloomy. You can't see quite what's going on, and your estimates of troop strengths change based on how far away you are and the visibility. So you get, here you're within about 50 or so. Every hour, your troops send you back reports, detailed reports about their current strength, what they're doing, and their morale. And again, we've crashed back to basic.
Bastard!
no known reason. This is not so good. And it happens all the time. So now we move forward towards the end of the stream. This was a first for me. I was determined to get some kind of result out of the battle. I got a level 3. We're now looking at 20 to 11. So I was playing in 128k mode. And the French cavalry are making a massive attack. And I'm attacking my artillery back on the baseline. You can inspect troops to improve their morale, but not if there are any troops within your baseline, base 3 areas, because the general does not want to risk his neck. So I've sent my cavalry to attack his artillery, and they've got wiped out. His cavalry has wiped out my artillery. Things are not going well at all, and the French have driven me out of the South Farm. Victory conditions is you must control both farms and have less losses than the enemy. At the moment the French have both farms. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. The battle is lost. We are in full retreat. Another victory for Napoleon Bonaparte.
Damn you, Bonaparte!
So I'm now trying back to level 1 with instructions. This is 48k mode. And I've got various troops hanging about. So there's some very weak French cavalry there. I check the reports. We've lost 1 unit and the enemy have lost 7. So we're absolutely kicking his ass, which is really nice. So a good chance of winning this battle.
Bastard!
And let's try again. This is now coming up to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll see what's going on. We've pushed forward. We've got hold of the first farm. See, the farmers move in position across the valley. And the French first infantry are controlling the north farm, but we've got the south farm. And we are menacing his infantry, which is in form of square. So tell my cavalry to stop attacking, because there's no point attacking infantry in square. You'll just take more casualties. But instead, we'll just shell the shit out of them. Because they do not like it. They do not like it up.
Bastard!
And we've crashed to basic. Unexpectedly. So can we continue? No, we can't. With a nonsense in basic. Here's a line, we can't even get it back into memory. An extra in case number 1.
Bastard!
So what we can do is look at the code, we can list it, and we can print it, and do what we always try and do. Let's make it better. The general is saved as an auto run program at line 10. And as soon as we come in, we allow us to have input again, but then go to randomize user 63010, which is to run some machine code we previously loaded into memory. And here's what we have at 6310. We load 23622 into the accumulator and then compare that to 255. Now 23622 is the second byte in PPC, which is the line number currently being executed. So it's a line number check. And here's how the line numbers work between 621 and 622. The line numbers in the variables are little endian. So line 10 is 10, 0. Line 20 is 20, 0. Line 9999 is 15 and then 39. 39 times 256 plus 15 is 999. However, if we execute from the command line, what are the values of these peaks, 2361 and 23622? They are 254 and 255. So what it's asking is, have I been executed from the command line? If so, just leave. If not, we carry on. We copy the registers BC into H and L. BC is where we were called to randomize, so that will be 63010. We then add 25 to those. We then swap the H and DE over, put the contents of 23613 into the register pair HL. This is air SP. We then add our 63010 plus 35 into air SP, and that will be the code we go to whenever we encounter an error. So let's find out what's going on when we crash to basic at hoppers 12. So I've set a breakpoint in Spectaculator at 63036, which is just after the halt.
No better than best brown paper.
So we're coming now, and we're loading register HL with 23610, and then loading the contents of that address into the accumulator register, which is B, which is one less than the actual error, which means it's C, nonsense in basic. And then what we now do is progress through the code doing some error checking, looking for common errors that we might expect. So here we load these values up, compare it with, is it 0? No, everything's not fine. 8 is actually 9, which is stop. We've not got the stop. Then it's 22, which is then statement lost. It's not that. So we have to use this strange little CP function. Whenever we find something we support, we go to 63128. Here we're looking at 20, which is L break. If you press the break key, if you have, though it doesn't matter, we jump back to 7307, we ignore you pressing break, we just carry on as normal. But none of them are C, which B, nonsense in basic. So after going through all the errors we support, we then start loading our return addresses with 23618 being the line to be jumped to. We set that to 1. 23620 is the statement number in the line to be jumped to. That's also set to 1. So you want to jump to line 1, statement 1. If you recall from earlier, line 1 of the program is new. So after setting all this up, we're then going to jump to line 1 and it's basically nuke the entire program from orbit. So if you remember, PPC points at the line number currently being executed, which is in 23621 and 23622, which is little endian. You work at these numbers out, and that comes up to line 1200, and it's statement 3, which is at 23623. So the line causing the C nonsense in basic is read X string, X.
Yay!
You get a nonsense in basic if you read a number into a string or a string into a number. So something is going wrong here. Before we do some debugging, we've got some issues with the code in that some variables exist but are not defined within the code. For example, D string is not defined, neither are the initial contents of the array C. So what I've done is wrote a small program, as we'll be loading here, to set up some test data. Because variables are stored in memory, and the layout of the variables in memory is defined in the Spectrum manual. So it's certainly possible to look at these and then decode them. To make sure my program actually works, though, I'm going to define some variables of my own in this program here. Here we have various variables are A, sausages, B string, various arrays, all the different types of variables, integers and floating points. Then I'm going to save the program to tape.
Chosen man.
And then feed the variable format into my next program. But when we also save programs to tape, you also save all variables that are currently in memory, whether defined in the program or not. So save is basically a snapshot of where you currently are, both program and variables. Save to tape as Snork data. This will save both the program and all variables in memory. What we now do is, using ZX block editor, we take the variables data block and we copy that and we put that underneath our variable decode program. But we also need to create for it a data header because it doesn't have one by default and it needs one. So create one of these, just a data header, and we need to give it a start address and a code length. After that, we just paste it in, and then we can just pass it in directly after our program. When it runs, it loads the data for us. So on loading, it asks you how long the data was. I don't know whether doing this nicely, but essentially tell it how it's 1434. That's how long it expects to look for it. Do you want to print out the contents of the arrays? Yes or no? And also, do you want to output to the printer instead, which is useful for creating like a PDF or debugging, which they also do later on. So here's our stuff from Snork data. A was an integer called 100. There's a long numeric variable called sausages, which is floating point. I had great difficulty working out how the hell the numbers worked. integers and floating points are both 5 bytes long, whereas integers are 16-bit little endian numbers. Floating points have an extant and a mantissa, and I couldn't for the hell of me work out how the hell the mantissa worked. So in the end, what I do, I copy the bytes of the array to a variable in the current program, which is variable A, and then just say what the hell A is, and that just works perfectly fine. Because floating point numbers are any integer beyond 65,500 or so, plus or minus, or anything with a decimal point. So a wide range of numbers, including billions and millions and whatnot. Numeric arrays, again, each number is 5 bytes long, and we can see what's going on here. So this is just to prove that the program itself works, which I think it does. So now I'm going to feed in the actual variable data from the general into the code, which is 3570 bytes long. We definitely want to see the integer array. This time around I won't send it to the printer, but I will afterwards because I'll get a nice PDF. So CH is a value of 1. That's used to toggle between the two fonts. We also need to know that SS starts as 0. SS comes up in the daily line 1200. So here U1 and U2, these are the variables used for the odd units. But C is our dimensional array, 15, 2. We know that C, 2 is the one we're after, and that seems to go a bit wrong, but that starts out mostly being a value of 1. See here various other unit locations, so that's where all the units start, their strength and so on. These are our initial orders, and the initial orders of the enemy will follow.
Tis a 7-barrel volley gun by Mr. Nook of London.
And also we've got our various strings here, including the mysterious D string, which says loading. I made some changes to the loading screen and the main map, just for fun. You'll see these when it's loading. But I finally got to the bottom of why the restore and the data was going all wrong. The data statements are used. It reads each unit has several strategies it can follow based on the position of the game, which is one of 4 states, based on how many farms the French occupy. And the issue was that the 4th state, which is the French have both farms, there was what I believe to be a missing data statement. Because what it does, the first number in the C array is decreased by 1 each turn. What is below 0, the second number is incremented. So then you go to the second or the third or the fourth data statement. One of the data statements is L. And what L does is do a reset. So when you read L, it resets things back to 1. So you don't go rampaging off the end of the array into some kind of user-defined statement or combat table. There was not one of those at the end of the 4th group of data statements. Was it everything else? That was fine. So I put that in, tested the program, and it still didn't work. Here I made another slight change. These are the 2 special units. I decided that they should only really be infantry or cavalry, not artillery. So I save all this, and had high hopes of winning the game, but then played and it still didn't work. Because even though I'd set this final L statement, so when we get an L, we reset, which is line 1210. So if X is L, originally it's just, we set C915 to 2 and then go to 1200. However, the line before it is the unit dead? If the unit is dead, then we return. But if it's dead, we never ever reset number 2. So if you had a wiped out artillery unit, that would never ever get reset. And then eventually, after several hours of play, or half an hour of play, or 20 minutes of play, you would hit the problem. Fortunately, I fixed it, and we now have a victory. So this is the general. I've zoomed in, adjusted things, and we're running this at 20 times speed. For the record, I'm playing this at the easy level, and please note that I've changed the colour of the sky from the original black to blue, so it looks pretty. The farms are rather annoyingly in the middle of the valley, and the farms do block visibility. So what I've done is I've moved my artillery back on both wings and moved them out to the side slightly. So the idea being that I have full visibility, and as the enemies send the infantry forward, I'm going to shell the shit out of them. I've also sent a unit forward to occupy the farm, because once units is in a farm, they are absolute bastards to get out again. So you don't want to let the enemy have a farm if you don't want to. So the enemy brought artillery forward on my right flank, so I'm going to send some cavalry forward. Hopefully they'll form square. So bashing away. It's now 9:30. So occasionally things pop up. So sending units forward, and they're sending cavalry forward in strength. The enemy at higher difficulties is a bit more cautious their advance. We have until 7 PM in order to win the battle, and it's 17 moves from the bottom of the map, where I am, up to the top. Cavalry can move 2 when charging, and they sent a very strong cavalry force forward on the right flank. Fortunately, I've sent my cavalry forward as well to stop them, and I'm just generally shooting them. But it's all getting a bit confused. And over in the middle, they've sent several infantry forces forward to capture the farm. Behind the farm, there can be lurking infantry and cavalry, and you can't see them, even though you can attack them from the sides, but you, as the general, cannot see them, and you, as the general, cannot move. So, artillery is vulnerable to our cavalry assault. Fortunately, we have troops nearby to help out and wipe those bastards out. But the artillery on the right flank is still there, and even though I've sent troops forward, they keep getting shelled to shit and then running away. So my cavalry are now trying to stop his cavalry marching in, and I'm slowly moving my infantry forward on the left flank, because I know it's going to take a very long time to get him. So desperately trying to move my troop around. The white square represents the telescope that I'm inspecting units with. This was played at real speed, with me checking the troops and issuing order properly, but then sped up 20 times with music, of course, for your entertainment. So I've got this cavalry squadron of the French desperately trying to kill my cannon. Fortunately, I've actually surrounded him and we are kicking the shit out of him. Although he's wiped out one unit, they were down to about 100 men or so. Units this close to me can be inspected, which improves the morale, not if there's a French unit nearby. I now start to send the artillery up the field. They have a limited range, they can fire about half the length of the valley, which is good. And I need to wipe out this artillery first because they do a lot of damage. It's now noon, and you see they're appearing at the far end of the valley, a new unit, and that's moved fast. That means he has got a brand spanking new cavalry squadron. The way the reinforcements work, level 1 they get 1 unit, level 2 they get 3 units, level 3 they get 5 units. And it starts out with trying to replace infantry units first, because we move them to win the game. Obviously he's not lost an infantry unit yet, so he gets a cavalry unit, because I wiped them out earlier. So that's going to cause me problems later on. That's me inspecting things. When you inspect things, the clock temporarily disappears, that's why it flickers out. So the 2 infantry units at this end of the valley are a bit scared and of low morale, so I'll be inspecting those and trying to bump their morale up before sending them back up the valley. I've had a few goes at this, and it's fixed. However, I had a couple of goes at the afternoon, because right about 4:30 it just went berserk. When I replayed again from the snapshot, it worked fine. So that is there, his new cavalry, rampaging on my left flank towards my artillery. I've lots of infantry nearby, some of which are of questionable morale. As you can see, everyone's retreating, they're not very happy.
Snorkers commands and we obey. Open the book and type away.
Thank you, Hagman. So as troops fall back, I'm inspecting them to improve their morale. Some of them aren't too much of a bad shape, but we're certainly now into the thick of the battle. Remember, the game ends at 7 PM. If you've not won by 7 PM, it's a draw, and that's a bad thing because there'll probably be another French army in the morning. You really need to control both the farms. You need to control the valley and have to keep your country safe from Boney. So, have I wiped that unit out, or has he advanced behind the farm and therefore is out of sight? Units in in close range take 10 minutes to get an order to, react within the end of the turn. In the middle ground, it'll be 20 minutes. Once you're at the far end of the valley, you're looking at half an hour. So you're issuing orders trying to react to situations which have already changed by the time the orders get there. So at this stage of the game, it's probably best to just hang off a little bit and just let the troops do what they can. At the moment, I've told all my infantry in a desperate attempt to capture the North Farm. And the artillery is shelling his infantry. I've got an artillery unit somewhere up the far end of the valley just wandering around. And the French have made a desperate attempt to try and recapture the South Farm. This will be catastrophic for me because I'll then need to recapture it off them if they do it. They're now on the far side of the farm from me, so I don't think I can shoot them with my cannons. This is a bad thing. But if I can capture both farms, I'll cause enough casualties to, and I may have retreated from the farm. Now I've recoccupied it, and that, my good friends, is the General 1 easiest difficulty with the bug fixed. I'll be uploading the fixed code and the variable decoding programs to Mr. Jim Blimey. Hopefully you can enjoy it. It's a good game. It was just frustrating when it kept crashing and dying and then ruining any strategy you might have. Thank you for watching.
A Netflix series he'll refuse. Instead he'll put on women's shoes. Some things arrived from eBay. Open the book and type away. Read the code and fix the game. On Spectrum, Commodore and MAME. Snorkers, commands and we obey. Open the book and type away. We all shall add infinite lives by getting rid of bats and knives that flap and stab and ruin the play. Open the book and type away. Read the code and fix the game. On Spectrum, Commodore and MAME. Snorkers, commands and we'll obey. Open the book and type away. Courage, boys, 'tis 1 to 10. The checksum's okay, as is Len. With growing subcounts we display. Open the book and type away. Read the code and fix the game. On Spectrum, Commodore and MAME.